Hello, welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And today I want to talk about developing your intuition. And I think the first thing we have to do is not make intuition a special thing. Like, you don't have to be labeled a psychic or an empath. Um, you don't have to have spiritual gifts like talking to angels and your guides. You don't have to have gone through an experience like an initiation, like a near death experience, or have a loved one cross over to have your psychic abilities. And in a weird way, there's no technique. But when we think about what intuition is and psychic abilities, uh, you could see that it's an expanded state of awareness. So, consciousness, being aware of taking in information and then being able to interpret it and make use of that information, you could call intuition. So, being able to see a bigger picture, read between the lines, see more colors in the rainbow, this added material, this extra sensory perception is in the category of intuition. Um, when we kind of think of the third eye, some people say it's the pineal gland or the pituitary gland or it's in the center of your head. But some people say that the third eye has two doors. That it has like a yin receptive door, like the moon, and then it has a yang, uh, active, penetrating force, and it's projective. So, like when Shiva opens up his third eye, this like stream of fire, this like laser beam, this like beam of light shoots out and burns the world. And that would be like the yang force. But the door turns both ways. Sometimes the door gets forced open, outer information comes into the mind. And so there's two, so the door swings both ways, or there's two sides to the door, but you can also look at it as logical left-brained hemisphere and right creative hemisphere working, and both of those spheres together, when unified, truly create a permanent unlocking of the third door. So we might temporarily crack the door open and receive psychic abilities through breath work, through drugs, through meditation. And it's hard to hold that door open permanently, you know, and function in life. Uh, so I can only speak from my experience and my understanding and level. So I'm not you, and I'm only me. But what I gather for myself is that my own psychic ability, there's an ebb and flow and a real timing with the planets. Like I know when we have like a super moon and it's usually in a water sign, my abilities to channel are stronger. And I I don't know all the mechanics, like why we are the universe, why we are tied to our solar system, and why the planets affect me on an individual level. You know, understanding the unity of all things helps me understand why my powers will fluctuate. Another thing is what type of environment and space I'm in. Uh, so timing, the witching hour, when people go to sleep, when they're not at work, when, your neighborhood, town, and civilization is kind of in a rest mode, there's less psychic smog going on. There's less communication, less panic in the air and stress. Those commuting hours, that 5 o'clock rush hour is when there's a lot of astral smog going on. Weekends, holidays, there can be a lot of astral smog, heightened emotions, suicides. And so, world events can interfere with the clarity of your psychic abilities, until mastered or until you learn to hold space for yourself. So, environmental challenges are a thing. Also, interacting with other people's auras, their own personalities, their willingness to receive information can disrupt. So, there's a lot of things that go into it. But I really pretty much said when you balance the left logical thinking and the creative receptive sides of your brain, truly balance them, it can create a state of permanent third eye opening and awakening. And it's just been my observation. I haven't seen anyone who has permanent third eye open awakening. And I guess I should take that back. I know two people, and for them, it was drug induced. And they didn't have the morality and personality to be dealing with that functionally in society and being mentally balanced. So both individuals who I respect highly um, had to kind of backtrack and learn discipline of the personality and character to hold that third eye open. So I really personally advocate a natural process of it opening. Um, so even with just the third eye, I like to visualize it like a door. And even if it's just cracked open, that's a lot of extra information. And so I think when people are shy and maybe the light's just beaming under the door, uh, they're getting a glimpse. They might call it intuitive, you know? But then, seriously, if the door's cracked, you can kind of peer in and see into the next room, into the next dimension. So I think um, taking a real look at yourself and your abilities, what you can do, evaluate yourself. I can honestly say, I think the door cracks open pretty wide for me at times, but then there's times when it slams shut. There's times that I'm not even seeing the light under the door. I can't even find it in the dark room. And I would say maybe on some level, I'm a spiritual athlete. I want to achieve certain things. I have, why am I alive? It's to grow spiritually. I want that door to open and I want to walk through it, into the spiritual realms. I want to discover and investigate. And so having a passion kind of created the motivation, the audacity to dare go where angels fear to tread, to maybe evolve myself a few extra steps ahead. And that's the Aries spirit. Um, but, anyways, I really believe to bringing this down to earth and exercising your abilities in everyday life. So, if you already kind of know me, you knew I grew up on a farm. We had 80 acres and we lived in the country. But we had a black lab. And if anyone has golden labs and labs in general, they like to roam. They they like to roam pretty far. And we had we had this dangerous road. And sometimes as my dog got older, she got braver and would go into the road. And it just so happened like this the busy street lined our property, and it was just like a barbed wire fence and a ditch, and then there was that busy road. And my dog would love to run and chase the cars along the fence line. And then sometimes at night, she would like to wander and go mark territory of like our 80 acres. I don't know if she did all of it, but she would do that at night in the middle of the night. We never put her on a chain because where are you going to go? I mean, next to us, other farmers, other people who had cattle and things like that own those lands. And so, besides just being on 80 acres, there's hundreds of acres. We're out in the country. So, it was at her own peril if she just wandered into, a fox den or a skunk den, uh, you know, or whatever is there, mysteries, uh, other wild creatures. I wouldn't be surprised if there'd ever be, who knows what would wander down. But, anyways, uh, so I became worried about her. And I loved my dog. I raised her since she was like a puppy. I would, I was so worried about her. We couldn't have her in the house. My dad was like allergic to animals, and it was just a rule no animals in the house. So we had outside cats and outside dogs and outside animals. But I worried about my dog, especially when she was a puppy. So I would go crawl and I would sleep in her little house. You know, I would, because I was worried that she was cold, and I was worried that she needed her mom and she needed her other puppies with her. And since she was by herself, I didn't want her to feel a certain way. So I really cared about my dog. So, as she got older and got crazy and would wander out into the streets, and, you know, I was worried. And so having a purpose can force you to use your abilities, force you to open that door as needed. And so I remember I would just lay down in my bed at night, and I'd be like, I bet she's wandering out on the freeway. I bet she's over in the neighbor's yard. For some reason, they raised exotic birds, and so my dog would go over and pester the peacocks, and that's like a 10-minute walk down the road. I'm like, we don't want to receive an embarrassing phone call. Hey, your dog is pestering our birds, in the middle of the night. So I would just like close my eyes, and I would just like reach out with my mind and kind of like scan our property and the fence line. And I would imagine like I was literally talking to my dog. I'd send her images, and I would say out loud in my room, get home now. Like I'd whisper the words. Like I'd be like I'm whispering it right into her ear, or I'm right in front of her scolding her. I'd be like, get home now. And I would try to see if she came back. Other times, I'd imagine like a red leash. I would just send it out there and then yank her back and pull on a cord, like a psychic cord. And so I'd play games like this with my pets, and sometimes it would work. You know, I remember my dog was chasing after something that she didn't need to be chasing. It could have been a person or whatever. And I imagined this like red cord wrapping around her neck and yanking it back like a collar, and it worked. I was like, wow. So I like pulled on energy. And so little things like that, little games would develop my ability. And then over time, you get a pretty good track record, and that builds your confidence. And so, in a weird way, you need confidence. You can't doubt yourself. And so, the more you practice and play, the it dissolves the doubt, it dissolves the insecurity, and it dissolves those blocks. And then you got proof, so you don't need to believe anymore. And so I would say live the magical life of being intuitive, And then the awareness part. Um, just be more mindful of like, oh yeah, like there's still like there's a lot of things that like I brush off. Like even recently, like one of our bosses was from like main office was supposed to come down and kind of just see if things were going good in the retail store. And we were like supposed to dress up and be on our best behavior and all this stuff. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know what? I don't think she's coming. And then I was like, how could you think that? You know? And you don't want to create that for her and whatever. And I was like, and then how do you know? So then I was just like, yeah, how do I know? And then the next day happened. And then my boss told me that this head boss wasn't coming in. And I was like, yeah, I thought so. So that happens a lot. Like just feeling your gut, feeling the environment, feeling how you feel and feeling how your thoughts are feeling. And you start to get a sense of when information is coming from what I like to call your higher mind. And it's so that's really the process. Right before I started this video, it was actually because I watched a video. Something inside of me said, let's look, we're done uh binge watching tarot readings on, your love life that obviously doesn't exist right now. And then something said I had a hunch, I had like this movement. It just said, let's watch a video on like developing intuition. And then I watched one. I was like, yeah, yeah. I watched another. I was like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, let's stop. And then I was like, let's make a video on intuition. I mean, you've been playing with this your whole life. And so, and immediately what came to my mind is, you have your aura. That's usually a couple feet out. I would say about 1 foot out for most people. You have a defined aura, and that's like your sense of self. There is another layer to your aura. It's about a foot wide all around you outside that first layer, that first shell. That so that first shell is literally just, I would say, 6 inches from your shoulders. That's that first shell. There's another 6 to 12 inches. That's your second shell. And from that second shell is where your intuition is actually operating from. How do I know this? Because I received the psychic information on it, like as soon as I thought about it. And so there's a lot of inner dialogue going on with you. And a lot of it could be considered psychic information. You're channeling it in, you're tapping it in. But there's so many levels to the path of developing psychic abilities and intuition. All of it's good. So both the videos were talking about breath work and tapping into your body. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But you know what? For me, it has nothing to do with my body. It's not yoga. Like, it's a path of yoga in its own right. It truly is. But mine's more mental. So I would say the body, yes, has all this wisdom and whatever. But there's the you beyond your body. And I would have to say that part of you is consciousness. So let's just go straight to the root of it. Instead of go straight to consciousness and awareness, because awareness is the product of consciousness. That which you are aware of is what you interact with in the limitless, and that's your reality. So the more conscious of what you're interacting with on subtler and subtler levels means you're getting a full spectrum. So I'd say, so yeah. So it's like paying attention. So I pay attention when I see threads of energy attached to people. I pay attention when I see silhouettes made of light, silhouettes made of shadow. I pay attention when information just comes to my mind and I know things. I pay attention to my dreams. And so it's the art of paying attention which naturally opens up your psychic abilities, your intuition. Uh, and so, like, paying attention to the strange things, I would say you could drop out the mystical. The mystical is going to happen. You can drop out the spiritual. The spiritual is going to happen. And you can make it very practical. Because the reality of it is you want these mystical and spiritual gifts to be functional in a very practical way to serve you, to help you serve others, to help you serve yourself, to help you serve the world. So I think when you're coming from a place of I want this power to serve me and to serve others and to uplift the world, that type of intention is going to start to open up that door for you. Because, like, what would you do with all that power? Like, yeah, I'm power motivated. But then you can only measure the power by using it. And what good is using it just for myself? So I might as well then be the hero of my own story and maybe help others. So then I feel like it collectively, and then it's like, well, I'm tired of being the hero. Wouldn't it be cool if everyone was the hero and we were all superheroes? So then it's like, yeah. So the reality, I feel like just sitting in your power and knowing what you know in that quiet space, like sitting on your throne, is the end, is the end game. Going, I got my crown on, I know who I am, and I know what powers I wield. And when you know it, you don't have to then use it. So when we think about that, so where is that place of all knowing? It's inside of you. So I think anytime you practice stealing your mind, calming yourself down, meditative, relaxed, chill, you then become naturally open and receptive. And then everything that's been on outside your personal shell of your aura, well, now it can come in and be processed and be understood by you. So it's like you've opened the door. So that was like an influx of psychic information coming into you. It comes into your whole body. And then your mind does the best it can to make sense of it, to offer it to you through images, through symbols, through feelings, through sensations, and direct knowing. So in a weird way, it's backwards, because if it's all energy and information, it has to go through another step to turn it into images for you to then understand. So if you're comfortable with just saying, okay, it's going to be energy, it's going to be information, and it might be very subtle, so I may not feel it, but my mind will pick it up, and I'll just get this knowing, I'll just get this insight, I'll just get an understanding, I'll get a hunch, I'll get a creative hunch, and I'll test it out, and wow, my experiment worked, or wow, I really did know that. Isn't that good enough? And then I'm sure you can master it, you know, and then be like, wow, I knew that 3 days ago. I knew that 5 years ago. And so you're going to get the confidence. You're going to learn your own way of picking up information. So I would say truth, knowledge, consciousness, awareness, all knowing, all penetrating source energy is there. And you're building that relationship on how you understand and recognize that. And that's how you develop your ability. Um, so I hope that was good. Hope that gives you confidence. Hmm. And I feel, I guess, sometimes there is such thing as wanting something too much. It kind of creates the opposite energy. Like someone says, okay, I'm gonna like dedicate myself like a practice. I'm gonna do this every day. That repetitive motion turns your brain off. Or because it becomes unpleasant and you lose the curiosity and the joy, you it turns it off for you. Or you might over challenge yourself. I'm going to be an intuitive and I'm going to give the best psychic readings and I'm going to show the world because that's what I did. And I I burnt myself out. And then it's almost and then I had to like it was like it was almost like I took two steps backwards because I was putting so much energy in that then the recovery time and the resistance was stronger. It's like, wow. On an intuitive level, like my inner child didn't want to play like that. So I noticed when I started doing readings for free, it took off a lot of pressure from my client and it was more fun. And then, and I noticed when I just would just experiment with it, less pressure, more fun, better results. And so now the reality of it, I feel like, there are stages. I feel like I was in that immature stage where I wanted to be the hero. And now I'm in this different stage where I actually get a lot of spiritual information and contact of an otherworldly dimension that it's not exactly useful for everyone. And it's almost like in the silence, which is where I've learned to retrieve this information, it's almost like it's better to keep it a secret. It's somehow knowledge is power. And this power isn't about ambitious things of the world, it's about spiritual things beyond the world of the living and the world of the dead and the cycles of life. It's beyond the wheel of karma. And I feel like the blessing of it is it kind of creates an aura of just general wisdom and general clarity and understanding. And so it doesn't have to always be stuck. So sometimes it stays more in the unknown. It's like a deeper knowledge. It's like an unspoken word. It just adds a depth to my experience and more life because there's more antennas, there's more frequencies that I'm playing with in life. And so I feel like it just, in the end, it just is life enriching to be living in a full spectrum of awareness and information. And I feel like that's the gift. Like that's where I'm at in my journey. It's like it's amazing. Like there's unlimited knowledge for you available 24 hours. It's just that a lot of people are trying to put it in mundane, limited reality. And I, so it's just whatever you want to do with it. But what's gonna share some stories about remote viewing because I'm actually pretty good at that. And I'm actually only good at it usually when I'm like talking on the phone or I'm playing my games. Uh like it's like when I'm talking to someone on the phone, I kind of naturally get an image. And when I hear their voice, my mind decodes their voice and I get images. And I can I used to do a lot of psychic reading. And so it wasn't hard for me. It was a skill that I was using every day, hardcore. And so, but it it's amazing to tell people details of the room that they're in, to tell them what they're wearing, to tell them where their injury is in their body. You know, it's amazing to remote view in their past, to remote view in their future. And so I think a lot of my prophetic abilities had to do with my ability to remote view, which is mentally taking my mental body through time and space. Um, so there are no limits to what you can do, but you also, but with that, you might be more comfortable leaving it all on the mental plane and never materializing it into the physical plane. So, and that's fine if you're okay with that. Like, my favorite part about artwork, it's isn't the finished product. It was thinking of it in my mind, being in that creative flow, picking out the tools like the pencils and the paints and the paper, and kind of like just being in that creative energy was what I liked about art. And when I'm drawing, it's just the sensation. It's a very tactile sensation to move the pen, the paper, to move the pen on the paper. It was very sensual, and the image was great too, but I didn't care, you know, after I'm ready to throw away the art. And I found for myself, I like to just be in the creative process, being in the creative process. And so I think that's happened with my meditation, and that's what happened with my psychic abilities, that I like to leave it in the realm of creativity, in the realm of inspiration. And so now it's not so much for other people, but it's a way of energizing myself, staying in a personal flow. And and I don't think we hear that from people who are self-proclaimed psychics. You know, I remember, well, that'd have to be another video because we're going to be cutting time. But basically, all my prophecies for COVID-19 totally happened, even though my one friend was convinced that this young guru in India knew everything. I was like, whatever, you know? And so you might get, well, yeah, this video is really coming to an end. So good luck and have fun with your adventure. It's a timeless adventure.